everybody. Welcome to a very special shortwave tonight. We are doing a policy meeting. So for those of you who want an exciting show, you tuned into the wrong show. This is probably the wrong one, but please, if you still want to be interested in see how we actually make policy and think about things like this, then I hope you'll be here, and feel free to still comment and ask questions. I'm going to bring in 3 of my policy team who could make it. We have a massive policy team, but many of them could not make it this evening. I'm bringing in Eric and Matthew and Jerome all in together to do our policy team meet today, talking about lots of different things. Again, if you want to be part of this, you can if you want to. You can super chat if you want to. You can comment if you want to. We'll grab some comments. We'll talk about it if you like. If you like what you're seeing, click that like button. That's awesome. If you think it's cool, please do that. All good. Happy to have you as part of our meeting. Hey, guys, how are you all?
Doing well.
Doing all right.
Good. To be forward, we got in the last time we had a meeting last month. We had a couple things we were working on. We were talking about the fixing public unions. We were also talking about trying to come up with bounties for people with good ideas. But we also now know that we have to worry about the 2 most interesting parts that just happened recently: transportation and the environment, those 2 more than anything. So I don't know, where do you guys want to go with this? Where's your head on this one? Jerome, do you want to take the lead on this?
Yeah, I think we should finish off from last time. Again, that was the public union, what you just said. Now, the good idea bounty, that's a great idea, but that is distinct, in my opinion, from the tax income bounty, which is oriented specifically around replacing, finding alternatives to tax revenue. So I think we should separate those.
Okay.
So potentially we have 3 things that we have loose ends for. We can start with the public union negotiation be a referendum. That's how I wrote it down, but you know what I mean.
We can go there if you want to. Which one do you want to start with?
Well, I want to start with the tax income bounty. Because
that's your baby. So I understand. Yes, exactly. That's your baby, of course.
Yeah.
Eric, Matt, do you care which one we start on?
I think we could wrap up the union aspect. I think
that's try to wrap up the unions.
Yeah.
All right, my issue with the unions, as I always say, is public sector unions aren't negotiating actually with their bosses, right? They're negotiating with people who are with them, alongside them, with people who aren't spending their own money. So if we can make some type of system, this is the hardest part: when and how do we vote, right? If we can make some type of system to where the public votes, and now the union is negotiating with the citizenry. The union is negotiating with the people who they're servicing or they're working for, right? Public employees work for us, but they don't negotiate with us. So we have to find a way for them to negotiate with us. And I know the pushback is, well, Larry, then we'll just screw over the union people. I don't think that's true, right? Many of us, particularly in New York State, we know people who work for the government. We know people who work in public sector unions. Why would we want to screw over our neighbors or our family members or such? I don't think it's specifically unnecessarily going to screw somebody over. And the second part is, if you remember, many times when Cuomo was around, for sure, he screwed union people over constantly. I mean, the corrections officers didn't even have a contract for 3 years. They took zeros in everything for 3 years. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to get the governor out of negotiating and get the people negotiating instead. Eric, you were concerned about how we deal with that voting, and I agree. We're not going to be able to get people to vote every 3 months, are we?
I don't think we'll get. Well, we generally don't get people to vote at all. That's a bigger problem.
That's true. Yes, you're right.
But I think the bigger problem that it will change the contracting altogether, because you won't have these gargantuan contracts that include administrative that no one likes. So it'll be like, I'm going to vote for this contract because I like my garbage man. it's not going to be like, oh, I like the person in Albany who tells my garbage man what to do. You know,
yes,
I'm not going to vote for his inflated contract. So it may have to be that we have to split up the contracts to smaller digestible bits of like, we need this for this area and to do these tasks. And we vote on that, and it'll be a list of those. So that way we're not kind of, you know, stifling the system. So to get the larger, more abstract ends.
Well, then what if this by default breaks unions down into more localized unions, right? What if there were then instead regional unions, or maybe not even regional unions? Maybe like you want to help education, make two separate unions, right? We don't actually have a teachers union. We have an administrators union that teachers are in, right? It'd be nice if we had a teachers union and an administrators union. That would change everything.
Paraprofessionals.
Oh, yes. And the paraprofessionals. Thank you. Yes. If we had three unions, paraprofessional union, teacher union, and then administrator union, that'd be awesome. The problem is I don't want to break up a union, if that makes any sense. I want it to naturally happen because it makes sense.
Well, I think that, like, if, again, this is projecting a lot, but were I the union and this system fell on my lap, I would create campaigns to vote for these union contracts as a package. Be like, hey, vote yes on these three, vote no on those two. You know.
I see.
So it's just like, yes, we as a group want these three together, and we only work. You know, the teachers union contract only works with these two with it. Otherwise, that teacher's contract is all for naught. You know. So it's about how they sell the contract to the voter, and ultimately convincing the voter to vote for the contract is a better situation than, you know, the current situation, which is you're dealing with an elected official who has re-election on the mind and, you know, coffers to fill.
But then does the election official, is the official the one they negotiate with? In other words, does the union negotiate with the county executive, or does the union negotiate with the governor? And then once that's negotiated, it's voted on by the people? Or is there some type of council? Are we playing the are we playing the citizens council thing? Are we doing that with a citizens council where they negotiate with the union, right? Or does the legislature do it? How do we set up a system?
Well, the legislature and the governor have the same problem, right? You want the citizenry to vote on it. So maybe employ the jury duty system of like, hey, you're all called to vote on the teachers union contract for, you know, Rensselaer County. Congratulations.
So now you got juries. I don't know.
Well, at least in part. I mean, I'm sure that, you know, that you know, some expertise will be, you know, volunteered in terms of kind of, but you kind of want as much, you know, boots on the ground input on this, because it you know, then it's just a choice between bad options, right? It's like, oh, the governor gave us a contract and the legislature offered us a different contract. Which one do you want? Both stink for you, Joe voter, right? So maybe
you're right. Yeah. If you don't have someone negotiating, the governor will still do the same thing.
Yeah.
Kiss the union's butt, get the union get the union votes, basically buy votes.
Yeah, and then blame the voter. Now. You're like, I love you guys, but the voters.
Right. Yeah. So it'll be like, yeah, see, I gave you everything, but the voters hate you, so still support me.
Yep.
Jerome, help me. Come on, help me. Matt, you quiet. Come on now. You want to do this?
I'll help Jerome. Something. Blockchain.
Matt's going to say blockchain. It's fine. But
okay. Yeah, I was just about to say blockchain.
Look, I'm not against this being technical, right? Is this the way then? Do we not use the jury, to your point, Eric? We don't use a jury, but we instead use some form of online citizenry blockchain thing and select X people to create the contract that way. Is that a thing?
There is an option, something called liquid democracy, and it allows you to basically delegate your vote on demand, as well as revoke your vote on demand. So there's actually literally some blockchain products that are exactly that with liquid democracy. I don't know the details of it, like logistics, but if you wanted to employ liquid democracy for this specific type of use case, I don't know if that'll be helpful or making things overcomplicated. But for example, let's say I just moved to New York. I'm in Chicago. So let's say I moved to New York. I don't know these issues necessarily.
Right.
So I know this guy named Larry Sharp. So I delegate my vote to you. So now, Larry, you have 2 votes because you got one from me. And
that scares me because now I'm going to start buying votes.
You could, but at the same
I'm gonna
time,
start buying votes.
Oh, you
harvesting 2.0.
You're not suggesting.
I'm just saying,
you would.
I'm just buying votes now, right? I'm just
but here's the
thing.
Checks,
I'm gonna buy me some votes.
If I had any suspicion you're doing that, literally at any point in time, I can revoke and redeem and take my vote away from you, give it to Eric, or just.
But hold on, but I guess I mean I hate the idea of creating more law, but if we were to go this route, this would still be election fraud, right? If someone were to buy a vote, that would still be against the law, wouldn't we? Wouldn't have to write a new law for that, in theory, right? I mean, if we created some form of blockchain voting system, because Ray brings up a point, I want to bring Ray's point up. He says, wouldn't having a vote more often create a habit of voting and being involved? Ray, I think yes. However, getting people to get the day off and go to vote, I think is asking too much. But if we could create some form of blockchain where someone could do it from their phone or from their computer, which they're on, I think, yes, this could spur more democracy. This could spur more direct voting. I think it could do that. Yes. My worry is with what Jerome just talked about. Now, how do I buy all the votes? Do I buy proxy voting? That's my concern.
I'd raise the point. I think it's a very good way of starting to inject a more often voting system just to get people out there. If, like you said, people taking the day off, it's not always a possibility. Bringing people, right. the ability for people to vote at any point, whether it's something more inconsequential necessarily as smaller local government things, it gets people's mindsets trending towards the right direction for saying, okay, how do we get votes, more people voting in, whether it's, county legislator elections or even, state elections? How can we push people towards that? And whether it's the delegating of votes, the specifics don't necessarily matter as much as I think it is trending people towards the right direction.
No, I like what you're saying, because if we could use it for the union situation in this specific case, but it could then be set up to be able to be used for many different things, right? So that now once we started it, it could just kind of keep going. It becomes the norm. So kind of what Ray's saying begins it, and all of a sudden now people are doing it. So I don't know. Sam says, imagine if I needed to take a day off and read and vote on the contract of every public employee union contract. Ouch, that would hurt. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Right. I don't think we could do that. I think we do have to come up with some kind of, is this a separate policy then? Right? Is the voting blockchain policy, is that a separate policy, or do we fold it in to this policy as a way of getting more people involved in the voting system, and in theory having a safer voting system in theory by going to blockchain?
I definitely think it's its own policy.
Separate policy.
It will be such a it will be a paradigm shift. It definitely is its own policy. It was an excellent use case for it, but yeah, that's my thought, at least.
My worry though is if we even put this out, let's just vote via blockchain. Someone's already talking about it, right? We're not the only people to talk about this, and the policy is such as you said, a sea change in how we do voting. I feel like it's impossible. I think I'd rather link it to something like, for example, in New York City, we have the ranked choice voting in the primary in New York City. No place else in New York State, right? Just that. While I want ranked choice voting in everything, I think it wasn't a bad idea to just put it in the primary first. Because now that was the reason, that was the use case, right? Did it work, right? The world didn't end, right? You may not have liked who the mayor was. I didn't like it anyway, but it doesn't matter, right? That was now, okay, the world's not going to end. So what if we were to take this blockchain concept and put it only for union contracts as the use case, right? So now people see it. Regular voting still the same. Just this is different. And this is every 3 months or something. I don't know. I'm making that up. I don't know if quarterly is the right answer. But this is the thing. It's every quarter or every 3 months. And it's only on union issues. So whenever the unions want to renegotiate, whenever they want to have another issue or concern, the localized union, every 3 months, they put it up to the people. The people vote yes, people vote no. Maybe it's ranked choice even with that. Maybe there's, to your point, Eric, maybe there's not one contract, there's 5. And we rank choice vote the 5, or even a specific issue or addendum to a contract could be done separately.
I think the city council in New York City has some sort of like, I don't think it's discretionary. Like it has discretionary funds, but they have like a list of projects where people call into their individual council member and vote on extra funding for a certain project. I forget the name of it. I'm trying to look that up now, but I know something like that in New York City exists for smaller projects where they have some kind of discretionary fund and a series of projects where people, essentially call into the council member's office to have preference for one project versus another.
So there's a precedent for this already then?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what it's called.
No, if we have the precedent, when we make the policy paper, if we put the precedent there, that's going to make it, obviously stronger. If you put that precedent in there. I think the precedent for ranked choice voting in New York City is also part of the paper. And I think this, in addition, makes it part of the paper. 2 sets that aren't perfect, but at least they're precedent that someone can start thinking about how it works.
I think the blockchain, the idea of liquid democracy would definitely have to be packaged with something. It is, I think, as you said before, just too big of a change for people to accept for anything other than something small like union contracts. If you can get people saying, oh, well, every 3 months they have to do it, or they can do it, right? Every 3 months they have the ability to try it out, see how things change. It also gives you the ability to iterate. Let's say the first election, not that good. All right, we try again in 3 months. We see how we can iterate. We see how we can advance this technology in a way where people have never had to vote on these things before. So it's to them, it's inconsequential. They either did or they didn't, and they can go about their day. But it gives them the opportunity to try this out and say, hey, this might be a good idea for local elections or whatever the future may hold for them.
Well, I think it does something else, right? Let's say the first election doesn't go well at all. Well, now the unions can do what they're supposed to do. They can lobby us and not lobby the politician, right? If I'm a police union, if I'm a teachers union, if I'm a sanitation workers union, I should be lobbying us. Hey, you should give me a great contract. Why? Because I need to do these things for you. I'm doing the services and taking your tax dollars. I'm going to lobby you, the people, and not lobby some politician who will simply know what the people want and just give money to his union bosses.
And this is one of the main problems with public unions has been the lobbying for certain parties over others. And it's a very
bingo.
One of the biggest issues, and this solves it perfectly, I think.
Yes. Now money doesn't go to the politician anymore, right? Money now has to go back into the people, which means now the unions won't be taking dollars and giving it to some, I don't know, politician A or B. The unions now say, hey, people of this region, of this area, this is how we service you. This is our value. Give us a good contract so we can do the thing that you want. And the people now can have some control over you saying, hey, we would like you to change how you do X, Y, or Z. We don't want garbage picked up on Wednesdays. We want it picked up on Thursdays. Okay, great. Pick it up on Thursdays. We vote for your contract. Everybody's winning, right? This should, in theory at least, set it up to where the public is getting what they want, right? Am I off on this one? Tell me if I'm wrong, please.
No, I think it's better when, the individual is more involved in their day. Like it causes more interest in terms of what's going on locally if you have an effect on it, right? So, Joe every day kind of will go about their business, be like, garbage day is on Monday. I wish it was on Tuesday, but I'm powerless to control that because I don't even know who to call. What's a council member? What's
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So
and now he can't get off. If he goes, I wish alternate status of the parking wasn't Tuesday. I wish it was Monday. Did you vote on a union contract to change it? No. Your fault, man. Your fault.
Oh,
but not just that. Let's say that it shouldn't be on Wednesday, and there's a real reason why it should be on Thursday or whatever. The union can then start telling you, hey, Eric, the reason why I'm doing on Thursday is this. This is the reason why it should be on Thursday. And then you go, oh, I get it. That's why you do it on Thursday. And at least now you don't feel helpless. You feel like it makes sense. And now it's back and forth together. I really think, but there's a second piece, which I don't want to insult, but I think you all know this. There are too many government employees who believe they're doing us a favor. And you know what I'm talking about. There are too many who think they're doing us a favor, that they don't work for us, that they're in charge, and we work for them, and we should just shut the hell up.
Come on, we've all been to the DMV.
DMV, you know what I'm talking about. Exactly right. If all of a sudden now this is the issue, it changes the relationship between us and public servants, right? And maybe now we'll even have more respect for them. They'll have more respect for us. This could increase respect on both sides. Now, not overnight, obviously, right? This would be some time before this would happen. But so I think it works. You know, Ray's saying public unions shouldn't exist. Well, maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't. They exist. So, and they're not going away.
Well,
so
I think we went into that tangent last time we discussed this, is that, you know, if the contract never gets voted on, that we're stuck without a contract because no one's voting on it, that we have some sort of, you know, default protocol that, you know, all right, then when we can't establish a contract, we're going to go into what are you those co-ops, worker-owned co-ops as the next best option. And then the union becomes, hey, we want that contract anyway. We're turning into, we're less of a union now. We're a worker-owned co-op, and, you know, we're gonna buy the equipment from the city, and, you know, to fulfill this contract, or lease it from the city. You know,
that's a tougher sell, but I get it. I think you're right. I think
that's a down the chain. We've had 38 votes, and that's the limit. You know,
38 votes. That's the limit.
Yep.
38's the limit. Eric, that's the limit. Okay.
Yep. It's New York City.
Yes. No. I look, if you're going to privatize, right? Particularly in a city that's going to be deep blue, there's no way you're privatizing without co-op, right? That's the only way that privatization would even be feasible, right? It would have to be a worker-owned company. There's no way New York City would accept anything other than that, or it's run by the state, right? Either the city runs it, the state runs it, or the workers run it. There is no way there's going to be some, I'm some bigwig from Connecticut, and now I'm going to take government money so I can run stuff. That's not going to happen. So I think that the co-op is good, but is that okay? Jerome's going to be mad at me. Are we adding that into the policy, or is that a separate policy?
I thought we said that was different. Maybe I hope I'm fully appreciating what Eric said, because what I was mentioning in previous meetings was, basically a path to replacing the unions with worker co-op.
I love the idea.
How dare you? This is just a solution if things don't work out. We're not actively trying to destroy the unions. This is just a mere compromise.
See that, Jerome? Eric loves unions. See?
This is a compromise when we're at an impasse at 38 times.
No, but to be forward with you, I mean, if it's a worker-owned company, why do you require a union?
There we go.
If it actually is a co-op, right? To be forward, right? Unions are awesome when you're an employee. Makes total sense. You should have a union. Makes sense. I get it. But if you own the co-op, the whole company's a union, because it's all worker-owned. Now, unless the co-op would also have contractors, right? If the co-op would have contractors and or part-time workers, would there be a separate union? But if that union was there, that union would not be a union that would negotiate with the city. That union would negotiate with the co-op.
Right.
So that union would not be a public sector union. That in essence would be a private sector union.
Yep.
Am I making sense or no?
Yep.
So that would actually be a private sector union that would negotiate with the co-op that was doing the work for the city or the local municipality, whatever the case may be.
Right. But Eric, I'm not fully understanding the default. So after the 38th vote, you there's no resolution.
Well, I'm just spinning it just to make it more palatable to people who will call this a union destroying idea.
But I'm just trying to understand. With that said, I'm still just trying to understand. Okay, who is being? Are we saying that after the that threshold 38th vote?
He made that number up 38.
I know, right. But after that,
Eric pulled that right out of his ass.
Right.
Yep.
After that final vote, are you saying that who is being required, or if any, to create a co-op? I'm not seeing the bridge there between.
So and I'm just spitballing here. This is all subject to change, right? That there's an impasse that the voters and the union, they can't agree on anything. There's no contract that the voters want to vote on, and the services still need to be provided. So as a default, be like, when there's an impasse at some great distance in time, or that there's an impasse and it's not going to get resolved, that the next level default is that the municipality now negotiates and the voter negotiates with worker-owned co-ops for contracts. So you're no longer
okay.
So it's now you have a bit more competition. It's you have worker-owned co-ops, so there may be one or two that say, hey, we want to, we're the Thursday garbage crowd, we like Thursdays, we do stuff on Wednesdays, so we would prefer that. And then you'd be like, all right, you got the contract, because these are the
In fact, let me do a comment real fast. Scientific Libertarian says that if the co-op is basically a big union, why not just give the union the ability to become a co-op without calling it a co-op? I think he's right. I think, to your point, there should be two ways. One, after whatever, if at some point the citizenry simply cannot negotiate effectively with that union for whatever reason, right? They've decided, no, we don't want whatever you're doing. I think a union should be able to, even before that, if it wants to become a co-op, as long as the workers are protected, whether that's via ownership of the means of production, whether that's via union. What do I care? As long as they're negotiating fairly in a free market, I don't care if it's a co-op or if it's a union. Just stop. Right now, they're not negotiating in a free market, right? Yeah. They're negotiating with people who are buying their votes. They're negotiating in a world to where the people aren't playing with their money. They're not negotiating with their bosses. They're negotiating with their friends. So if we create an actual negotiation with their bosses or people they're working for, which is us, I don't care if it's a union or co-op, whatever it is. Let them go either way. I think he's right. I guess my point is, Eric, I like what you're saying, but it shouldn't only have to happen at the end of X number of votes.
Fair enough.
It should be able to happen whenever the union decides. In fact, they could even vote on that. They could vote on, contract A, contract B, or co-op. They can do that if they want to.
I think it'd actually be preferable in a lot of these bigger cities. People would actually go for the co-op a lot of the times over some union deals. I think
the reverse is true.
You think?
I think the smaller, the more chance for a co-op. That's what I think. I mean, I don't know. We would find out if we tried this, but my gut tells me if you're a smaller company and you know people, everyone in the sheriff's department, right? Like them all,
sure.
Yeah. Right? I would be happy to have a co-op there, right? Versus, I mean, New York City has 40,000 cops. Is that going to be one massive co-op? I guess it could. Sure. It could. Or you could break it up into in theory, but I don't know why you would, but a Queens police force, a Bronx police force, or a Bronx police union. I guess you could, but why would you? I mean, unless the people really wanted it. The problem is most of the people in cases like this in large cities, they don't live nearby. Most New York City cops, as an example, don't live in New York City. Right? So why would you want a local or regional union in the Bronx or Queens when literally you could be working in the Bronx this year and next month you're working in Manhattan and 3 years later you're working in Queens? Would you want to do that? I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, policing is slightly different between the boroughs.
It is.
In terms of what gets prosecuted, what gets let go.
Agreed.
So that might have some influence on, like, hey, in the Bronx we have these problems, and as cops we need
All right, we must be messing up. We got to be messing up, guys, because Russ is coming in. Russ must have saw us. He thought we were messing up, so Russ jumped in. Russ, are we messing up?
I'm sorry. I was the board. We had a board meeting for Illinois, so
Oh, I thought you were watching and we were messing up. You were coming to save us.
No, I have no idea. We literally got done 10 minutes ago, or five. Well, actually, 2 seconds ago.
He's just here to watch us fail live. So
is that what it is? Okay, that's how you
I'll
are.
drink my coffee here and watch you.
I thought you loved us, Russ. Thought you loved us. So no, we are trying our best to figure out how to deal with this public sector union negotiation with the public, right?
Okay.
That's what we're on right now. And we're talking about maybe using some form of blockchain or something like that to have the vote so that we could vote separately, not in a regular election day, but maybe every 3 months or something like that. So, and do we break it up regionally or not? And then you missed all this. But we also talked about the idea of maybe we would use the blockchain for this as a way of introducing blockchain voting into the state. We're only using it for this. Nothing else changes. Everything else is normal. When people get used to this, then we could then expand it into something else once we've seen it has worked in this test case, similar to in New York City, how ranked choice voting is just for the primary. Now we could expand it from there. That was another idea we brought up. The other one was making it to where they could vote, the union could vote on a union contract, or it could vote to become a co-op, whatever it feels more appropriate, either unionized or a co-op. And then if the co-op then use other contractors or hire anyone else, they could unionize if they wanted to, but that would in essence be a private union negotiating with the co-op, not negotiating with the city or the municipality.
So,
did I get you up to speed?
Yeah, so I'm up to speed now. So my first question is, who is voting via blockchain? Is it the union organization or is it the taxpayers?
No, the taxpayer, right?
Okay,
right now, the biggest issue with public sector unions is they're not negotiating with the people who pay their salaries. They're negotiating with people who are buying their votes and buying their influence. So if we change it to people who are actually paying their salaries, the voters, now they have to negotiate with us, right? And the initial pushback was, well, wait a minute, are they just going to bust unions up? I don't think so. Lots of people work for the government. We know people, our family and friends, they're our neighbors and such. We're just going to try to break the union up. But now we're negotiating with us. The money they're now spending to bribe politicians would have to instead go back into us saying, hey, this is why we pick up the garbage on Thursdays, not Wednesdays. This is why we do X, Y, and Z. And if we want to change something, we could go directly. We want to I don't want my garbage picked up on Tuesday. I want to pick up on Wednesdays or whatever. We'd have more control back and forth. And hopefully it would change the respect level between the public servant and the public. Right now is it's separate. And the public servants, too many of them think like they're doing us a favor. They're part of the government and we don't matter because they're right. We don't. But if we now negotiate with us, now the respect is both ways.
Yeah. Jerome, you tell them what CTU's been pulling up in Chicago?
No.
Oh yeah, Larry, you'll love this. So one of the CTU's executive
tell me what CTU is.
CTU is Chicago Teachers Union.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Forget I'm a New Yorker. I'm not an Illinois guy.
No. Well, lots of people are familiar with CTU from a teachers organization because they basically, if you're looking for one of the reasons why far left stuff is showing up in lots of other teachers unions, CTU is one of the reasons why.
Got it. Okay.
They got taken over by some Marxists, and they actually used the term Marxist in 2012. And one of their main organizers is on the Chicago County Board, is on the Cook County Board. He's running for mayor of Chicago, which is actually more powerful than mayor of New York City because Chicago doesn't have a city charter, which says who does what. So the mayor has it's almost like a mini governor, kind of. Okay. And
so what's CTU doing?
CTU has spent $2.2 million of union money. Practically, they figure that they only have about $500,000 left in the bank right now, and all on their candidate to get elected to the mayorship. And the primary is on the 28th, and if he loses the primary, they will have spent $2.2 million of union members' money and gotten nothing.
Well, two things. One, they shouldn't spend the money in the first place. So if it works, we've trained them the wrong way. And if it fails, at least they learn a lesson. No, they haven't. They're going to keep taking more union money and do it again.
Right.
So
well,
that's exactly my point. If we had this type of situation, they would have taken that $2 million and it would have been an ad campaign for us to tell us an outreach campaign.
Right.
They would have outreach people to us saying why it matters, what goes on. They'd go on a listening tour for us, right? So that we would know what matters. They would be trying to just bribe their politician.
Right. Here's the other thing. So they have PAC money. All the PAC money's been spent. They dipped into the fair share, which is basically the budget for like using negotiations and strike pay for teachers when they go on strike. That's what they've been using. They've been using accounts that they shouldn't have been using to
so I guess
get
teachers better not go on strike.
And there was no vote of the board. The executive committee did this all on their own.
So the question becomes, though, are there any repercussions for this? In other words, is he going to get in trouble, or is it he or she? I don't know.
He will not get in trouble, but the way it is right now, there's no repercussions because there's no union board election, so to speak. So basically, this is kind of a crux. This gives us our case that says, look at how bad this teachers union is. They're completely ignoring their union members' needs, and they're spending all this money on politics, and the guy didn't even make it past the primary because he's a Marxist.
But let me go to the next level, though. They're not spending their money on their union members, which is important.
Yeah,
but their union members support the public. So they're not even supporting the public either. And the way the system works now, what is the incentive or the option for the teachers to do? What can they do?
Right.
Nothing. They have forced speech, whether they agree with this or not. Their money is going to this. And the Supreme Court has said money is speech. So now they have forced speech, right? They don't have a choice, or they have to quit their jobs. But with our system, unions could break up if they wanted to.
That's correct.
It just
you could break up a union monopoly so that you don't have a monolithic.
Hold on, I want to be clear on what you just said. You just said if you could break up. I don't want to break up a union. I want them to see that it's better, and for them to have the ability to do what they feel is best. Look, if there's a union out there doing the right thing by their members, good. I don't know any that are doing that. But if there was one in theory, that would be amazing, right? But the reality of it is, then unions would actually break up as they see fit, because some teachers probably think this is a wonderful idea. Let's support the Marxist. Well, then your union could support the Marxist because you think that's a good idea for your union. But those who don't think that could have a separate union negotiating separately with the people and go, we don't give a damn about the Marxists. We just want to make sure that our kids are taught.
Right.
And we don't have to be involved at all.
Right. So I'm going to go back to it. So this works both ways. So one, you've got the crypto, you're using blockchain technology to allow union members to vote as to what union they want to belong to. If they want to belong to this union or that union or this local or that local, whatever. It also, so the union negotiates one-on-one with the mayor. So it runs almost exactly like in New York City. The mayor is the one that basically decides whether the contract gets approved or not.
Yep.
So now we can take that power away from the mayor.
Yes.
And now the people of Chicago actually get to vote on this contract too.
Yes. Exactly right. Yes. And in theory, if you use ranked choice voting like Eric was talking about, you could actually have multiple contract plans. Right? So you could submit 4 or 5 contracts. You'd have to pitch to each one to people, hey, this is the one that we think is the best one. Ranked choice voting, the most popular one gets it. And maybe one of them even is a co-op plan. And maybe ones are breaking up the unions. It's voluntarily breaking up the unions if they want to.
Or you could do approval voting too. I mean, if you
Sure.
have it set up for ranked choice voting, you can do approval voting too. And I don't know if everyone here is familiar with that.
What is
Now,
that?
hold on. Ray just brought up Ray brought up the idea of would those profits return to taxpayers if it was a nonprofit? If someone decided to create that could be a proposal. You could create a proposal that would say our union is going to be a nonprofit union, and once it makes after X dollars, the union will return Y dollars to the state, or give a dividend to all the people that might. I mean, think about that. The union could be giving a dividend. And you could be bribing the citizens that are bribing the mayor. If you're going to bribe somebody, bribe a citizen, damn it. All right? I mean, if you're going to do it, bribe the citizen.
Yeah.
If someone's getting bribed.
Right. So approval voting is something that we use in Illinois in the Libertarian Party. We use it for a couple of different things. But basically, you vote yes, no on a voting line. Yes, you approve, or no, you don't approve. And with approval voting, basically all you're doing is just counting the yeses. So people can vote on individual.
So to be clear, if there's 5 ideas,
yes,
on each line, you vote yes or no on each line.
That's correct.
Then all of your yeses are counted. All of everybody's yeses are counted. And whatever line has the most number of yeses wins.
Yep.
That's that. So I'm not ranking them. Ranked choice voting says the first, then the second, then the third, then the fourth, and the fifth. If someone doesn't win, then that fifth, they get their second choice goes. That's ranked choice voting.
Right.
Approval voting is all of the yeses get added. Whoever has the most yeses, that's the winner.
Yep.
Does that make sense, Jerome, or no?
That makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. We could do that too. I don't care. Whichever one is appropriate, I'm fine with it. Just you'd want to have multiple options available. And the reality of it is, and this is what we talked about earlier, Russ. It's probably initially going to fail. Like very few people are going to actually vote to start this thing up. That's probably going to happen. But it doesn't matter. Just like ranked choice voting in New York City, we had trouble in the beginning. It took us weeks to figure out how to count it. Remember that the Board of Elections couldn't count.
And then you had people, arguing back and forth as to who voted for what, because they, it went 4 or 5 rounds. I mean, I think if it would have gone 2 or 3 rounds, I think they probably would have been able to handle it. But they went to round 6 and 7, if I remember correctly. So
I think it was 4. I think it was.
Oh, they went to 4.
I think if I remember right, it was 4. I think so.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, either way, the point is any of those would work. And then once we're doing it for the union contracts, it changes the entire system, right? The worry I have here in a state like New York is we don't have public referendums. So the odds of us getting this passed in New York through our legislature, which is completely bribed, I don't know how we do that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Right. And if it's California, this would pass. Right. You could put it up and it could pass. You get enough signatures, it could pass. I don't know how this happens in New York State unless we get enough legislators to agree. We'd have to pitch legislators to make this happen, which means they're pitching Republicans who don't who get beat up on unions. Right. The only unions that the Republicans are doing well in New York State is police unions. Every other union doesn't like Republicans in New York State.
Right.
So I don't know. This is a separate question, but it is Joe giving me a super chat. Why is the NFL considered a nonprofit? Not all nonprofits should be. Yes, correct. Most people don't realize what nonprofit status means. It doesn't mean you're a charity. People think a nonprofit means you're a charity. A nonprofit is simply how you decide to pay your taxes.
Yeah, and I believe that they changed that a few years ago. I don't think they're a nonprofit anymore.
Well, there we go. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So, all right. I think I caught you up on everything.
Okay,
Russ.
great.
All right. So, where are we on this policy now? Where have we gone?
Oh, thanks for that. Thanks, Eric, for the Janus decision.
Yeah. Right. The Janus decision.
it's relevant to the conversation because that those Chicago union workers can, bail out of the union and still keep their jobs. But for a lot of people, it's just like not being in the union is not the best option. They just want a different option in terms of they want to be in a union that functions for them, as opposed to, because that's the problem with a lot of unions, is that the workers don't really feel heard in many of them.
100%.
Oh,
I hear that all the time. They want the protection of a union, but the union doesn't actually support them. In fact, most unions I hear all the time, they spend 90% of their energy on 10% of their bad apples. Right? And then the good apples get almost no attention at all. But again, if we have this system where they're negotiating directly with the people, people can unionize as they see fit. This supports Janus, right? This policy supports a Janus decision. Am I wrong?
It allows Janus to be more functional because now, I living in the state where Janus is from, as a matter of fact, even in the city where Janus is from, the state workers, the state workers are only allowed to be in AFSCME. That's the only union that they're permitted to be in. They don't have choice. And I think that.
But hold on 1 second. Hold on. Is that a law? Is that a rule? Is that a policy? Why are they only allowed to be in AFSCME? That's law. That's law. That's Illinois state law. Illinois
state law says if you are a state employee, and that is the state of Illinois. So that would be the bureaucracy of Illinois. So like if you're a local municipal police, there's a corrections officers union.
Got it.
If you're teachers, there's teachers union. If you're state police, there's a state police union. So I'm just talking like the bureaucracy, people that do investigations, stuff like that. Because Janus was.
So does that mean in a state like Illinois, does that mean we'd have to change the law? Or so our law would have to countermand that law?
In Illinois, it would. I don't know for New York.
Actually, I'm not sure in New York either. It's a good question.
Yeah.
Eric, do you happen to know?
Given what we're discussing, I don't think we're having any, like, even if let's say Janus didn't exist and you had to be a member of the union, what we're proposing doesn't interfere with membership. We're just changing who the union negotiates with. So
yes, but why not take advantage of the entire thing and make it a whole lot better?
Fair enough.
Right. So yes, you're correct. We could do this even if there was a law that there was only one union in the entire state. Yes, if there was one massive omni union, it still would now negotiate with the people, but then that would require that it's a statewide election, basically, or a statewide vote, I should say, a statewide voting day every 3 months.
So the bigger question would be, would people who bail out of a union have the right to start their own union or join a different union and negotiate in good faith on,
And the point is, with this rule, as long as they do it every 3 months and the local people vote yes, they may.
Yeah.
Right? They wouldn't even necessarily have to, right? If they're able to submit, let's say you're a part of the union and there's just one teachers union, right? But some faction within the union wants to submit contract number 2 instead of the main union's contract number 1. You wouldn't even necessarily have to have 2 different unions. You have a union and then the public voting on contract 2, and the contract 2 is more advantageous for everybody. They're going to vote on that one and they get their way. It's basically, if you're going to be creating separate unions, if you have different interests, but your interests are ultimately going to align more with the public.
Yes. And the problem though is what you're saying, Eric, is correct. We don't have to change anything, right? We could just make the same unions exactly the same. Everything's the same. But my point is, if we're going to say that now negotiating is no longer with the state, it's with the voters, then those laws shouldn't really apply, if that makes any sense, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm not negotiating with the state anymore. I'm negotiating with the voters.
Well, so your elected officials are still haggling over the individual language that's in the contract. So it's not like individual
Well,
voters.
we weren't sure about that, right? You missed this part too. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We were saying that they're probably going to do that, but actually, Eric thinks we should make more juries. So he was like, we should have jury duty and select people to negotiate on behalf of their municipality, like jurors, like jury duty, and then people show up and they negotiate. I wasn't happy with another set of jury. I wasn't happy with that.
Eric, there's a bunch of Republicans in Montana that love you right now because they were actually trying to pull that stunt.
There we go. Yes,
and have it so that citizens could vote and create their own grand juries. Right now, the state legislature quashed it, but there's about
just
10
a
or
different
12
form of conscription. That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah, there's 10 or 12 Republicans that are loving you right now in that state.
I posted. I sent you guys a link, and what New York City has is this program called participatory budgeting, where they have a series of proposals. And then they narrow those proposals down and people vote on those proposals as to where this chunk of money goes. So if we, kind of take the bones of that model and say, here's, half a dozen contracts, submitted by the union, one submitted by anyone, from the public. And, then you whittle down those contracts, be like, hey, Larry proposed a union contract and it looks pretty good to me. So that you kind of whittle down the contract to like, well, here's 8 contracts to vote for. Rank choice, which contracts are more in line of your, persuasion.
So look, we may be going too far on this idea. I mean, maybe we are. I don't know. Right?
Never stopped us before.
That's true. This is true. It hasn't stopped us in the past. But maybe it should be simpler. I like all the ideas tremendously. I think they're great. And I would like it to be one massive policy that would fix many things. My worry is if we don't make a massive policy change, then nothing's going to change.
Yeah. So the only thing that you can do with public sector unions is, I should say this. At the state level, you can only impact the public sector unions that are in your state. So in other words, if you wanted to mandate voting would be by blockchain token.
Sure.
Then you could do that. But you couldn't do anything to private sector unions. You couldn't do anything with the federal government because that's.
Yeah, but look, I'm not trying to mess with private sector unions.
And I don't want, don't do that. No.
Yeah, I'm not even trying to.
I would be mad.
Private sector unions are actually negotiating with the people they work for. I don't have a problem with that. That's what they should be doing. I'm good with that. This is specifically public sector unions. And the reality of it is, if this works locally, this will go everywhere. There's no doubt. If this works in one state, this will go everywhere. Right? Yeah. We can pitch it for New York. Maybe West Virginia picks it up. I don't know. Whoever. Someone else picks it up.
I don't know. I mean, well, we actually do have public referendums here in Illinois. Now there's a couple of restrictions on them. In other words, you can't do anything at the state level, but counties can have them, cities can have them.
Yep.
All sorts of other districts can have them. So,
but I feel like this has to be statewide. I mean, I guess we could try it locally, but I feel like maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like if you even try this locally, it would just be squashed. I feel like the pressure that would come down from the state would be so strong that there's like no chance of it doing anything. Maybe I'm fooling myself here. I can't see it. The unions in your state, I'm sure, in mine, my teachers union is a powerhouse.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they run everything. They're a powerhouse. If I can't do this at a state level, I think I have no chance. No chance of success.
Yeah, it would be it would be very difficult to get something like that done in Illinois.
Yes,
but
I feel if we at least made this move, we're making public sector unions accountable to the people, which they should be. We're making public servants again, which is what they should be, right?
Mhm.
We're making more democracy for both us and them. We're allowing them to have the unions that they want to have. We're taking the money out of lobbying against the individuals, right? So it's not going to be as valuable to lobby an assemblyman or a mayor or a governor as it would be to lobby us directly so that we can win the vote. Basically, every 3 months, they're campaigning for us every 3 months if they want to make changes. It's good. Everybody's happy. They don't spend any money. They can take the money and spend it on their own people. Life is good. Give themselves raises, fight, whatever, do whatever they're going to do. But if all of a sudden things get bad or their union begins to suck, this is to your point, Matt, if your union starts to suck, well, in 3 months, you're going to have a new idea, a new negotiation to have union number 2. And even the threat of union number 2 on that ranked choice voting makes union number 1 have to actually support its people and not just write checks to the governor or to the mayor. Am I wrong with this cultural change?
Yeah, I mean, even if within the union, you encourage that the union has to open the notion of proposals within the union so that it's not the union leadership that's putting out a contract alone. It's like the union leadership puts out a contract and all the members of the union also can propose a contract to be voted on.
Of course.
Then you have internal competition there. And, like the workers really want this contract and leadership wants something else. The workers are
Eric, you would be surprised at how rare it is that union management and the actual union members want the same thing.
They almost never do. That's my point.
Well, and that's why
exactly
you'd be opening
my
the
point.
door. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'd have to have some kind of rule like, I don't know, I'm making this up, but if 20% of the body votes, then that also gets put on the ranked choice voting, right? So the ranked choice voting would have a maximum of say 5. I'm making this up. And maybe the top 5 vote getters within a union, those are the 5 that go in the ranked choice. So now the individual people could just vote and say, I can't get rid of my union boss. He sucks, but man, I can change my union around by voting this. I'm voting that.
Well, that brings up one thing, Larry, that I think would be a good thing for a lot of public sector members. I think they would like. A lot of these union elections are held at weird times on weird days.
Yep.
And it's basically because they want union membership, some union membership. I'll say, or management. Some union management want the smallest number of voters possible, and so they will
100%.
schedule the election on weird days, weird times, have weird rules. And if you were to do this where the membership all votes by blockchain, that would open up a lot of things, and it would be a pro-democracy movement within public sector unions.
Absolutely. And I would bet private sector would probably follow.
Private sector, you would have to have a federal law on that. That's all. That federal private sector unions are all governed at the federal level by.
And I'm saying is that what happened? If we show that this works, look, what I'm looking for is a cultural change, right? I don't want to have to legislate all this shit. I don't want to add a bunch of laws. That's the last thing I want to do, right? I want to change the culture so that unions are more democratized, so that more people get what they actually want. Not, I'm a union person and I'm stuck in my dumb union that doesn't support me. I would like unions to actually support the people and not just support what they do now, which is politicians. We start with public sector because we can control public sector, and the rest will begin defined, right? EDB09 says, why don't you flip it and unionize the public instead of established unions? I don't know what that means, but let me be clear on what I mean. I don't want to unionize anybody. This is not force. I am changing the environment and the culture to allow people to unionize as they want. Right? Remember, this is a libertarian policy meeting. So this is not us. This is not us going, we're doing X.
So that being said,
go ahead, please.
Why don't we call it stakeholder democracy? And we're going to get a whole bunch of other people to join on board if we brand it as stakeholder democracy. Because that's what it is. It's the people who have stakes in the game are voting. The workers, the voters, the taxpayers. It's stakeholder democracy.
The problem with stakeholder is there is a connotation that includes like people who own stock and leadership and such. I think there is a connotation there. If we're going to do that, I'd rather brand it as worker democracy, right? We're talking about unions, which means we have to make the left happy, right? We have to brand this to the left.
The left likes stakeholder. Stakeholder is a nice word.
You think so?
Yes.
They like worker too.
Because stakeholder in the general parlance means anyone who has a say. So I'm a stakeholder in Coca-Cola even if I don't own stock because I drank Coca-Cola as a kid and now I'm chubby, right? So I have a stake in it because Coca-Cola made me chunky, right?
That's the reason why you did that soda drink, Eric. That's why you're chubby. It's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a vested interest in what Coca-Cola does going forward. So I'm a stakeholder in Coca-Cola, even though I'm not a stockholder. I'll brush you up.
I think I've heard that the word stakeholder used.
Yeah, have you
kind of advocate for saying I should have to advocate. It's a fact that I'm a stakeholder and therefore I should have a say. Yeah, that sentiment.
Sam seems to agree. Sam says true for the left. Stakeholder is better than shareholder. Yeah, maybe. You know what? We can't. I was wrong. We don't have to brand it to the left. That's not true. We have to satisfy the left. We don't have to brand it to the left because the right has to like this too, right? But I guess maybe stakeholder is good. So stakeholder democracy.
Yep.
Okay.
Something to mull over.
So then where's the union part?
Well, the union is also a stakeholder because they're the workers, right? And we're the stakeholders because we're the taxpayers and the ones who take part in the service. Who's definitely not a stakeholder is the government. The government in terms of
the current people who are negotiating. They're absolutely not stakeholders.
They have no stakes in the game. I mean,
that's correct.
If you want to go on a different tangent, maybe we should add us like you will be divested of your salary if you negotiate a bad contract. If you want to be a stakeholder, put some skin in the game.
I'm not going to fight you on that one, Eric, but I think
stakeholder includes the people who are actually, involved in the transaction, so to speak.
So is it union stakeholder democracy? Is that what it is?
Worker stakeholder democracy.
See, Russ likes worker like me, but maybe stakeholder is better. I'm okay to be wrong here.
Yeah, well, it could be
just stakeholder democracy, and then when we refer to different, stakeholder democracy for the education union, stakeholder democracy for the garbage union, like we brand it specifically towards the issue, stakeholder democracy for roads,
But there's got to be we need to have a word for it or an acronym for it or something for it, right? So if it's union stakeholder democracy, it's USD. Right? Like the US dollar, right? If it's that, or is it worker stakeholder democracy, WSD? Is that what it is? Right? I don't know what it is. Go ahead, Matt.
I was saying prior to this, we had democratizing public unions. I don't know if we want to change it. We had DPU.
We had DPU. We had democratizing public unions. That's what it was.
If we want to include whether it's stakeholder or worker or somehow, I think because you kind of are working at two separate things here. We have the idea of the stakeholder democracy, which could be much larger than unions, right? We talked about this.
Well, but also like when you say worker stakeholder, you're kind of narrowing stakeholder. You're saying it kind of gives the connotation that the worker is the only stakeholder. And I'm saying stakeholder democracy, all the stakeholders are involved in this negotiation.
Yeah.
All those, looky-loos and busybodies, you know, in the legislature and the governorship, back off, you know. And it's definitely, I think it's appealing towards the left and the right, because the workers are dealing with, you know, the taxpayer, and we're not bribing essentially our elected officials to go in one direction or another.
So do we remove the old idea of democratizing private unions, or is that just like the word underneath it, right? Is it stakeholder democracy, and then underneath it, democratizing public unions?
Yep.
I think stakeholders it's the perfect mix of buzzwords, right? It's something to brand it under. You could get people behind it. Democratizing public unions could be whatever the name of the actual, you know, policy on the, you know, whatever we want to do. But I think the stakeholder democracy is perfect. It gets people interested. It's like, oh, what's stakeholder democracy?
So that could even in theory be an overall concept, stakeholder democracy. And then one of them could be democratizing private unions, public unions. I like it. Russ?
Yeah, no, I like it too. I think it draws, calling it that draws some people in that normally wouldn't be like interested in something.
Matt, are you writing this up now?
Yes, I'll have that. I had a little on our old stuff, but I'll start writing this up. Like, we're kind of filtering down now. We had, you know, this jumble of ideas. Now we're kind of filtering. We got our overarching idea of the stakeholder democracy now to our union.
Do you feel comfortable enough writing out a an outline of what we talked about from start to finish? Do you feel comfortable?
For sure, I can do that.
If you could knock that out and get that email to all of us again, so we know where we've gone with that. Have we walked down this road enough for tonight, guys, on that issue, or do we need to go deeper on that issue?
I think we delved deep enough.
I think we're good. We're at the 1 hour mark. So.
Yeah.
All right, let's table that issue for now. I think we've gone further. We did good first time, and the second time was even better. I think we're much clearer on it than we were last time. Matthew, you checked it last time. We're better now, right?
I think we have it much more clear.
Okay. All right. Do we want to go to something topical like transportation or environment because of the big problems, or do we want to go back to our bounty idea?
I think we should just. I would like to wrap loose ends, because we did get decent progress on the bounty, so it'd be nice to just wrap that up. That's my perspective.
Okay, where are we on the bounty?
There was two. One was, I think, a general policy idea, bounty, and which is separate from a tax, what I've been calling a tax income bounty, which is strictly related to alternatives to tax revenue. A bounty.
We were talking about alternative funding in general, right?
Yes.
Right. We had gone to alternative funding in general. It wasn't just taxation. It was just alternative funding. If you could find a way of building something, doing something, creating something. Isn't that where we were, if I remember right? Did anybody do a write-up on that?
That is the tax income bounty idea, is alternative funding in general, so that taxation isn't even necessary.
So, did we do a write-up on this? I don't remember.
We did not.
No, I don't think so.
No.
Shit. Okay. Too much stuff happened. I'm not. My head isn't there where we were. But Eric, do you remember what we talked about last?
No, I had a bunch of Post-it notes, but I can't find them. That's why I sent that email out to Jerome and everyone else to kind of refresh my memory. But I think we went to like a bunch of ideas. Like if someone has a good idea, you get, you know, a chunk of change if that idea is implemented. And I think we had some elements of crowdfunding, if I recall, that like we could, you know, gather funds for like projects that are wanted from, you know, people who are interested in that project being completed. But there, like, that's just like the tail end. I know that that's often.
Was this the idea that turned into the idea of having people vote on public plans? Is that where that went?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's correct. Yes.
So I think there was more headway on that, Matthew, than the actual.
I think that's what we spent a good amount of time.
So maybe I don't think we wrapped that. So maybe that just needs to be wrapped up so that we can talk about
this. Actually goes back. This follows actually on the stakeholder democracy then.
Yep.
Isn't it?
That works. Yeah, I think it does. That works out.
You
It
could.
still fits underneath this same banner, then, right?
Yeah,
The
because you're
idea
voting
that-
on projects.
Correct. You're voting on projects here.
So well, maybe we should kind of, maybe not right now, but spitball ideas on how to collect ideas to be because I think
That was my biggest worry. Remember we talked last time was how do we decide who decides the idea is good, right? So we want to build. Remember we wanted to build the transporter, the magical teleporter. Remember that concept? We're going to build the magical teleporter, right? We're going to get rid of the bridges and build a teleporter. And my point is, how the hell do we know a teleporter works? Right? Just because some guy says I can build a teleporter, that's wonderful. But who's going to vet the idea the teleporter actually works? That was always my worry about us submitting ideas.
Yeah,
someone has to vet the idea.
And I think if I recall,
right, we had talked about the idea that it had to go to a bank, or it had to be financed in some way.
Or it had to be insured that it could be completed. Like if you could find an insurer that says, I believe that this transporter can be completed, like we're going to put, money up that we believe it could be done. And if it doesn't get done, that insurance pays back to, fund a different project or,
Right. Yeah. There was a financial institution had to be behind it that would agree that they would back it. Right. And if a financial institution would back it, then the state or city to be okay with it, because if the transport doesn't work, we're not paying for it, right? It's got to work, right? So the insurance would pay for everything if this thing fails.
Yeah.
Do you remember this
transporter
concept?
Would have a high premium of like, this has a likelihood of not working versus versus a barge, which would be like the barge will work. The insurance premium is $1,
There we go. Yes, exactly. Yes. So, I mean, we know bridges work, right? We've seen many of them. But even you still have to insure it, because what if the bridge falls? Because I think it's a special kind of bridge or whatever, and the bridge doesn't work, right? It fails, or it fails its structural integrity test or whatever. Then the insurance company then says, well, fine, we got to knock the bridge down. Someone's got to pay for that. Insurance does.
Yeah, but before it even gets started, the insurance will kind of go over the plans and be like, there's no way this is going to work, So we're not putting up the insurance.
What it does is then the insurance company, they are charged with finding the expert. Yep. Because they are the one who has to pay if it fails. So I don't have to find the expert. All I have to do is make sure that the ideas that are here are backed by a financial institution. They're not going to back it if they don't find the expert, because they're going to have to pay if it doesn't work. Am I making sense or no? Russ, you look like no. I'm full of crap. Okay, am I full of it?
Well, no. I'm thinking this idea through, because a lot of people don't know this, but in the Social Security Act of '34, municipal units of government can add a little surcharge to a monthly bill and basically create a sinking fund, so that let's use an example like a sewer system. For a water treatment plant, you can have a small amount on the bill set aside every month that goes to building a newer, larger water treatment plant in so many years. Okay, so that already exists. So I'm trying to think if we can use that subsection of the Social Security Act for something like this. And in other words,
and that pays the bounty that Jerome's talking about.
Yes.
Jerome, there's your bounty.
Yeah.
So I don't know that. I don't know it well. I don't know the provisions well enough. I know that it exists. I just don't know the individual rules on that.
So does that mean, and this is where I don't remember, was the bounty was a flat fee, wasn't it?
No, it's a percentage. So what originally, for example, the bridge cost 811 million. So Larry, if your famous bridge idea, you get 1%. That's what I was suggesting, to incentivize people to go after the bigger fish, which will save the most money.
Oh, I see.
So you would get 8.11 million.
So the bounty is a percentage so that people would go for bigger ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Incentivizing people to do the teleporter idea or something, whatever that crazy thing is.
Also, And now that I remember, we had the alternative option of the bounty being the naming rights of the thing.
Oh, right. Yes.
Because
Correct.
if you're a narcissist,
Yeah.
you'd be like, yeah, it's mine. I don't need the money. I need to name it after me. But if you want to sell it to Verizon, there you go. There's your money.
Got it. Okay. Right. So I remember that. You're right. Thank you, Eric. Good. Okay.
It's
Matt, I'm
coming.
bugging you. Can you please write this one up for us too, please? Matt, are you there?
Yeah, no, I'm good. Sorry, I was trying to type up. Started to type up the other one. Yeah, no, that's perfect. I said, I can wrap it in. I'll title this. I think we have a good.
So
method
then
going off.
the idea is a percentage to encourage people to try to solve big problems. That was the goal, Jerome, right? That was why you wanted the percentage piece.
Yeah.
All right. And then the goal was if the person's already wealthy or doesn't care, they could also take naming rights to the thing. So I'm already rich. I don't care. I want it to be called the Larry Sharpe Bridge. I don't want the $8 million of that. I wish I had that much money. So anyway, so I got so much money. I don't stupid $8 million for chumps. I want you to name the bridge after me instead. And to your point, Eric, if I later want to sell the naming rights, I own them. I can sell them to whatever I want, and I can sell the naming rights on the free market however I want to sell the naming rights.
Yeah, the naming rights the naming rights I think might be possible under that Social Security Act, because I don't think they even thought about anything like that having value. But paying them a percentage out of that fund might violate some other subsections of federal code.
So the question becomes now, what's the alternative form of funding, or is there one? Or is it based upon budgets? In other words, I decide that the real answer for New York City is a bridge that goes over Manhattan. I decide that, right? That's what we should do. It should go from Long Island over Manhattan to Jersey. I decide that's the right answer. And I think this is the right, and I explain how we should make this massive bridge that will have no traffic in Manhattan because it'll go right from Nassau County directly into Jersey, straight push. I made this up. Obviously, I have no idea if it's even feasible, but that's what I think should happen. And I decide that I should build this bridge this way. And the bridge is going to cost, in my estimation, I don't know, $2 billion, whatever. I'm making all this up. How does this now go into the system? How does this go into the system to where I can get a cut of this or something? Does there already have to be a plan? Am I solving a problem? Is the city coming up with a budget? Like, how does this begin? Does the city just say, hey, we're looking for answers. Our budget is X. How does this whole thing start?
I think, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think the city of St. Louis and St. Louis County are actually running into this problem right now. So they got $1 billion from the NFL for losing the Rams. And the problem is that the accounts are sitting in escrow right now because neither the city nor the county of St. Louis have a plan for this money. And they're out there fielding ideas from different people, and people are talking to county commissioners. And
so is this when this would kick in, Jerome? When there's $1 billion sitting around, then it kicks in? Like, how do we get the ideas? Like, what's the beginning?
So what I did is I said, why not you could post the idea on social media.
Okay.
So
I remember
that. So that's where it starts. If it's getting, organic traction, then you would, if you need more details, this would be the politicians. This is what I was envisioning. The politicians need more details for viability. They would reach out to said person and would ask them what the further details are to satisfaction, to saying, yeah, this is viable. So I was kind of envisioning it's kind of the politician's job to find out if it's viable, and there would be the social accountability. Because
why in the world would a politician do that when they would rather just write a check to their crony? Right.
So then it will be a matter of, electability, because if you said it's not a secret if a tweet has been retweeted, 500,000 times, and if the politicians don't bite on it, none of them, then that makes that's bad press for the politician to
But in the
completely
left-right
ignore.
paradigm, that's not going to work, right? I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. I'm a blue or red area, and as long as I win in my primary, which is by raising money, so I write checks to my friends, I don't see this being powerful enough to move a politician. That's not the world we're in right now. I love the concept, and I think in the free market it works perfectly. But in the political system, what I care about is my cronies write me checks for millions of dollars so I can win my primary, so I can win my race.
But how are you? But okay, so what you're competing with is money versus organic engagement. If you have in the same neighborhood, you have 500,000 retweets. That means people, they care about it and their eyes are on it. So to compete with the status quo, all you got to be is that one politician that actually listens. That's easy. And you already have 500,000 retweets. You know who to engage with and what to campaign on. It's been handed to you. So I think it gives the advantage to the grassroots populist candidate in that respective jurisdiction. So they're competing against the status quo way of influence, which is just throwing money at it. That doesn't work on me, And so if you have this organic system that allows people to center themselves around these ideas, it will be very.
We're talking about an environment to where government literally controls Twitter, literally controls Facebook, controls social media. I see where you're going with it. I feel like the current situation guys, tell me if I'm wrong here. I feel like the current situation is unless this was a national thing, right? I could see nationally, right? But even nationally, most people want some form of Medicare for all, still nowhere near being passed, right? A whole lot of New Yorkers know about my bridge idea, nowhere near happening. I don't know. I guess I'm skeptical. Matt, am I wrong? Should I tell me?
I guess my reservation is you'd have to tie it to an individual somehow. You couldn't have, obviously, it'd be like voter fraud, right? If you're voting for ideas, you could bot spam an idea you'd like to the front. You'd have to connect it with some sort of verification. I don't know if anyone's familiar. I linked it. The Mountain Dew naming controversy. Where they said, okay, here, name our new flavor. And of course it went as well as you think it would. People started botting
as you think it would.
People started botting and you get names that are not so savory. So I think you'd have to tie it to an individual. And then that brings up a whole other
4chan came on.
Yeah. You'd have to bring up a whole other issue of
so they named it Hitler Did Nothing Wrong.
Yes. They ended up naming it Hitler Did Nothing Wrong.
Oh my God.
So that's my reservation right there.
Yes, or diabetes or moist nugget. Those are the top three. Yeah. I'm gonna go check and mate, Jerome, with this one. That's like check and mate. I think Matt is correct. We got to link it to something.
Well, point of clarification. When I say that you have an idea that has traction, it doesn't escape the fact that you need politicians who are willing to listen to the people. There's if you don't have that, it's moot. So, the idea is saying if you got that underdog, a guy who cares about the people, then he already knows what's hot. Or has a good idea of what's hot and what to campaign on, and they can have a grassroots populist movement.
I got an idea, Jerome.
Go ahead,
Jerome, stick with me here. I got an idea. If we're going to put this under the whole umbrella of stakeholder democracy, what if this plan also goes in the 3-month rotation too? So now it's separate from the actual election. So then politicians could take it as a feather in their cap. See, I helped get this passed. See, I got behind this or that, versus them physically campaigning on the thing itself. Do you see my point? So if we're doing the every 3 months blockchain vote thing, if that's a real thing, we could then take this also in the 3 months blockchain vote thing too. So now if I'm a sitting assemblyman or I'm a state senator, I'm not running my campaign on this idea. I'm just supporting this idea for the next quarterly blockchain election.
That works.
Do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I mean,
complimentary.
you could even have like a category of like, you know, brave new ideas, and you know, it turns out Bridgie McBridgeface has the lead, and people want it, and there it goes.
Well, again, if it's like if we're doing the blockchain effectively, we're only getting Bridgie McBridgeface if the people really want that. I mean, I hope they don't want their bridge named that, but whatever, right? But again, this wouldn't be naming rights in this case. This would be the idea. The naming rights is by whoever submitted the idea.
Yeah.
So if he wants to name it Bridgie McBridge, I guess he can, right? Whatever.
There was and you know, my memory's a bit vague. I remember we also had the situation where we have some sort of problem, right? There's a crossing that needs to be crossed over water, and
Right.
it was going to be like people had ideas that they proposed, and it would be a race to where it got funded. So like we have a crossing between, you know, like over a river, and we need to establish some sort of crossing for the public good. And a bridge costs 8 million, a barge costs 8,000, and the teleporters cost 8 trillion. And it would be like, which would get funded first would be the idea that gets done. So,
now, yes, wow,
like
we
that,
really should bring
right?
this up. Now that's all back into my head now. You're right.
Yeah. So
That's
it's
right.
kind of
It
like
was
a race of like, this is cheap and efficient and will work, and people will, you know, throw their, you know, and then you could have some sort of, you know, intrepid billionaire saying like, nope, teleporters, I'm throwing the money down so it doesn't cost the state anything. It's like, nope, teleporters, you know, I won, we're doing teleporters, and then they put up the capital.
All right, so that that's a whole different way of doing this if we're going down that road.
How did the
So then-
Brooklyn Bridge get funded?
I actually don't remember. Does anybody happen to know?
Because that was privately funded, but I don't know how that was.
All right, now if we're going to walk down that road, that wouldn't then require the Social Security piece.
Well, the Social Security piece basically allows the municipality to create the fund where the money.
What Eric's saying is, if we're going to look for alternative sourcing for funding, then people would have to put their own money up against it to make this happen, their own money. And then if that worked, then the person who started would get 1% of those funds as their bounty. So again, if the barge costs $8,000, he's only getting what, $80 or whatever, is that 1%?
Or the naming rights to the barge. That's still on the
But he can name the barge.
Yeah.
Barge.
The barge.
Yes, the barge. Exactly. Not a bad band. But anyway, or if they get the bridge done, then it's 8 million or whatever it is, 8 billion. That's a big chunk of cash. The teleporters get done. I mean, that guy's set for life, right? I mean, he's good. But then are we waiting for? I'm trying to remember where it was. Are we now waiting for other people to put money? Are we crowdfunding this? Why would we put money into this? Are we getting ownership to it? Why is the individual putting money into it?
I think we came to this because we were talking about the suggesting of ideas when we got to what's eventually just going to be more unfunded mandates. So we got to the crowdfunding where you have to, if you want an idea, you have to put up the money, I think is where we got to this. I don't remember.
But why do we, right? So let's say this is true. I'm going to go back to my plan. I've got this. Say again, Russ?
Oh, Brooklyn Bridge was a state project.
Oh, what's state project? Okay.
Yeah, it was a state project.
So I've got this idea to build this massive bridge from, Nassau County across the Manhattan Island, across Queens and Brooklyn to go right to Jersey. That's my idea. And it's going to cost me whatever, $8 billion. I mean, whatever it's going to cost, $8 billion. So this is my plan. I submit it. Do I now have to get people to give me $8 billion?
No,
and if they do, I get 1% of that, and then they build the bridge?
No, I think it has to go through, like, given the nature of ideas and how ridiculous some can be. It has to be like, I present an idea, people vote, yes, that's a good idea. That's the starting point. Free. My vote is that's a good idea. Then after it gets enough votes is this is a good idea. Then you open the door. All right, idea is open. If it gets funded, it gets done. If it doesn't get funded, we don't do it.
Well, what's the vetting process? Right, that's still my problem. Just because I say a bridge can be built from Nassau to New Jersey doesn't mean it can be built. I like the idea, which is a great idea. Doesn't mean it can be actually built, though.
The vetting process is one, the voters vote to see if it's a good idea. So you have the voters voting, and then after the idea is, let's say the voters are foolish, and they're and they don't know what things cost. Once they vote, yes, this is a good idea, then some sort of actuarial. That's where we got the private financing. Someone would crunch the numbers of like, all right, how much is this silly idea going to cost? And then they come up with the number and be like, oh, it's $1 gajillion. Go on, go ahead. There's the bucket. Start filling it. And then like crazy ideas won't get funded because someone will say the cost of this crazy project is astronomical. And it's just like, all right, put your money where your mouth is.
But I guess my point goes to, why do I, as a New York City resident, right? I live in New York City. Why, or say I live in Nassau County or in Jersey, right? Where this bridge is going to go. It's going to go from New York, right? So who would pay for it and why? Like, what's my personal incentive? I guess my incentive to give the idea because I get a cut if my idea is accepted. Makes total sense. But why do I want to give the money? I don't want to give any money to this bridge. I don't care. I live in Brooklyn. I don't care. I live in Queens.
Let's say you live in Nassau County and your business is in Woodbridge, New Jersey. And you're like, right, this would benefit my business. I'm not going to pay for the whole bridge, but I might throw a few dollars that way in hopes that it gets funded.
I think we started to break it down by whether it was county or region or something, because we had the exact problem of, well, all big money projects are going to go to the city. No one's going to care elsewhere. Who wants this tiny? I think Craig brought that up. Who's going to pay for this bridge somewhere in the North Country? Right. Who cares? Like, why would they? Right. The people, obviously, the 12 people who use the bridge would like the bridge, but
that's the problem, right? You go to a small county like Hamilton County. They don't have enough money to buy the bridge. There's not enough bodies in Hamilton County to pay for the damn bridge.
Yeah, and I think that's
now you come to Brooklyn, you got tons of them.
And that's where the genesis of the naming rights came in, where someone would be like, all right, I know 12 people use it, but at least the bridge is named after me. I think that's where the naming idea came.
So then if we go that route, then we can't have the naming rights be a way of paying the idea person. The naming rights have to be a way of rewarding the person who's building it.
Yeah, who's funding it.
Right? We gotta support the funder, not the idea. The idea person gets a check. I think we follow Jerome's model perfectly. The idea person gets a check. Well, that's all they get.
Point of clarification. You all, it's a good idea what you guys are talking about. It is not the tax income bounty. It's a good separate idea. So I'm only saying, let's continue down this road. But this is the reward people for good ideas bounty. So it is separate from the alternative tax revenue, the tax income bounty that I've been calling the TIB.
Yes, but the idea was that we wanted to find another way to pay for infrastructure.
Yeah.
While rewarding good ideas, right? While saving basically taxpayer dollars and getting stuff done and built. That was the whole concept.
Yeah. So the concrete example is you, Larry, is for the TIB, for saying you came up with the idea, it exists, it's feasible. So then upon accepting the idea, they cut you a check for $8 million because it costs $811 million to fix the bridge. So using that as a reference, like the intent was to create an army of Larry Sharps who can think like that in those terms. So I kind of like, let's kind of let that be its own thing and in its own right. It's simply to find alternative, incentivize and crowdsource the search for alternative funding to make taxation unnecessary. Separate from that is what we've been talking about, which is a great conversation, great idea, which is to say, well, let's talk about good ideas in general, whether or not it's saving money. That's cool too. That's what we're talking about. I just want to say, let's just make sure we're separating those two distinct intents. That's all. So we're not talking about the TIB right now. That's fine. I think we should continue and finish out this train of thought around just good ideas in general, whether or not it saves tax money or reduces
Or do we in some way reward all the people who put their money in? Do we provide some type of ownership plan? I don't know if that makes any sense.
I think we've just arrived at we've just arrived at private market.
Shh, don't the lefties will be mad. Be quiet. Don't say that, Matt. You're gonna make the lefties mad.
Stakeholders. They're stakeholders.
This is stakeholder democracy, damn it.
Stakeholder democracy. I think
not privatization. This is stakeholder democracy, damn it. Shut your mouth.
Overlooking what Eric brought up earlier with participatory budgeting. If we could find a way to implement that in a way where people can, whether it's naming rights or get some kind of reward or something like that, I think there's already infrastructure and precedent there for ideas that are outside where people are contributing, where citizens are contributing outside of their elected officials.
You know, this is all basically what the idea is behind municipal bonds. You know, back in the old days, the mayors or tax collectors would actually go out and they would sell fiscal slips of paper that says the city promises that we're going to pay you back X percent for lending us this money to build, you know, the sewer system or the the electric poles or whatever. So maybe
but the issue that I want to do though, Russ, and this is the part that matters to me more than anything, is I want this to be removed from the bureaucracy of the government. Right? That's the goal. Remove this. Once you put bureaucracy of government in this, when the government is running it and building it, the price is times 10.
Can be.
Right? The price is times 10. The timeline is times 5. And cronies get rewarded and cronies get their jobs handed out to them. I'm trying to remove that entire piece from the bureaucracy. Right? So now, once it's crowdfunded in any way it is, a private company builds it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's backed up. What if it falls? Buy insurance. So if something goes wrong, the insurance takes care of it. The city is not on the hook for it. The city gets infrastructure. The city can own it afterwards if it wants to keep the maintenance up if it wants to. So the insurance, it can keep the maintenance, but it gets built for free from the city or from the town or from the whatever. It gets built for free. Not under the city guidelines for that, just for safety and inspection purposes only, right? And so now the city's not running it. Once the city runs it, it's a disaster. Once the state runs it, disaster every time. I know, I live in New York City. How long does it take to build the L train? How long does it take to build a new line up the Upper West Side? It took 20 years to build a fucking subway line. One. Remember the big dig in Boston? What was that? 35 years to build garbage? Whatever it is, right? I mean, my God, forget about it. It's embarrassingly bad. I'm sure Chicago has horrible stories of trying to build something.
Oh yeah, I can tell you some tales.
There we go. Yes. So I'm trying to remove that completely. Do you see the goal?
Yeah, I see the goal. I mean, it basically sounds like crowdsourced infrastructure is basically what it sounds like to me.
Yes, but it's creating an incentive to do that, right? It's creating an incentive and a precedent to do that. Sam, by the way, likes your idea, Jerome. He gets it. Sam says, could a good idea be when someone proposes a budget/area cut, like I proposed a 10% cut to education, it gets approved, and I get a chunk of that. That may solve the negotiation issue. That's basically Jerome's plan. It's generic, but it's basically Jerome's plan, Sam. Yes.
I think
I'm trying something a little bit different. I like Jerome's plan so much, I took it all the way down a longer road. I said, I'm riding this horse further. You didn't ride it far enough, Jerome. I'm riding it further. So I'm riding his horse.
To Jerome's point, I think to Jerome's point, I think we should put a bow on Jerome's plan. Be like, this is a plan that's ready to go. It's on the shelf. Please buy it. And we could work on our Bridgie McBridge.
All right.
Bridge
So
plan.
let's, Matthew, can you put this also under the stakeholder democracy, also underneath that, and we'll wrap it at this point right now.
Hold on.
We have to find an incentive to get people to give. We have not found that answer yet.
Yeah.
But also, like, in terms of state revenue, like how, like, get a chunk of, like, I've created a way where, the state gets more money. Here's my idea. I get a percentage if you use that idea. Like the naming
Yes,
of
this is
bridges.
so. Let's do the TIB. Let's do that now, Jerome.
Yeah. Okay. So
Go ahead.
all right. So we're okay. So the tip, like we're doing it from the top. I'm confused.
Yes, we have wrapped up my horse that's I rode down 7 miles. That's wrapped for now. We got to figure that out. That's wrapped for now. Next time we meet. Now let's do the TIB.
So the TIB. I found a way to save the. I found a way to alternative funding for X number of dollars, and therefore we don't need X amount of taxes. So I've saved the taxpayers X amount of taxes. And I'll get 1% of what I saved. So
let me see. So for example, we have decided that as a city, right, that to fix the George Washington Bridge, it's going to cost us $8 million to fix the George Washington Bridge. We decided that's what it's going to cost. Jerome says, no. We can still fix it and give you the same results, but it's only going to cost you $6 million. It gets approved by the city. They go, you know what, Jerome? That's a good idea. We're going to use that idea. $6 million. We save $2 million. Jerome then gets a check for 1% of the savings. So the Jerome gets a check for, what would that be? $20,000. Is my math right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying, Jerome?
That's an example, right? So the other example. Go ahead. The other example would be, yours. I did the numbers. Cost $811 million to get the Brooklyn Bridge up to speed. You do the naming rights, you get 8.11 million, 1% of the cost of that, because that will be absorbed by or taken care of by the naming rights. So
so literally, then if I was able to save the whole amount,
yes,
I actually get 1% of the whole amount.
Yes.
Wow. So if I could find a way to cover the $811 million that it would cost, I get 1% of $811 million. I like that idea.
Yeah.
Why would anybody do it cheaper though? This is the problem. I mean, if the government's contracted someone, it's known you're inflating the cost. Why would anybody want to do it cheaper? Why would the government want to do it cheaper?
Well, that's why I like Larry's example. You're incentivizing people who can go from 8 down to 6, because they'll probably be able to figure that out quicker than the whole lump sum.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, and it's a check on, like the governor who's just like, nope, gonna cost $8 million because my buddy says so, and he's getting the contract. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And he's just like, nope, it could be done for 6, and here's the receipts. And he's just like, but I said 8. I was like, well, this says 6, and you said 8, so we're gonna take that $2 million.
Eric, okay, hold on. So Eric, hold on. This you bring up a valid point. So I'm the governor's buddy. I tell the governor I can fix the Brooklyn Bridge for $1.5 billion. That's the price. The governor goes, Larry, I love you, my friend. You give me $40,000 every other year, so I'm going to give you a contract. Here comes Jerome. Jerome goes, no. Here's how you can do it. $800 million. What happens if I go, oh, you didn't say that? I could do it for $800 million now too. Does Jerome still get his cash?
I got it.
And what if
first come,
first serve? He said
first come, first serve.
That's how this plan works. First come, first serve. Oh
yeah, first come, first serve.
So it'll force your buddy to make a more honest bid.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, no. I'll play devil's advocate on that.
Yeah.
The way that the contract was written from the state on the request for proposal, it has to be done at $1.2 billion. That's the way it was written. Jerome came in after the fact
Yep.
And then he said, well, if you do this, 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 you can do it for 800 million. How's that my fault? He didn't write the RFP.
That's true.
He didn't spec it.
So then what would have to happen then, if I'm understanding this correctly, Russ, once Jerome has this other idea, does Jerome have to resubmit another RFP? Does the state have to rewrite an RFP and then rebid it again?
Let's say only if Jerome bid on the contract. And this is in the actual rules for bidding on government contracts. He can file an objection that says, I bid this because I met the same requirements that the RFP said, but I could do it cheaper. And so then you have to go to an ALJ and then they make a decision. If you wanted to write it in the decision that you go to an ALJ and, if Jerome wins, then, yeah, he could get that as a bonus.
But how do we know that Jerome's plan will work? Right. I go back to that same piece. Jerome has a great idea, but how do we know who is going to be the arbiter of it? Yes, it works. And the problem is, if it's bureaucrats, no bureaucrat's going to support Jerome. They will absolutely believe Jerome. They're not supporting him because their job's on the line and they're all cronies. So no bureaucrat's going to be like, oh, Jerome's right. But if I say that, I get fired next week by the governor. So I'm going to say Jerome's wrong. Right. Because I want to keep my job.
If Jerome pays the right lawyers when he goes and protests the contract, then he could come out and win that contract. I mean, people do object to government contract bids, and they do win from time to time. It's not easy, but it can be done. And right now, the only thing that they win is they win the work.
Yeah, but hold on. Let me walk down that road now.
Okay.
If I then can get the 1%, am I literally begging every ambulance chaser lawyer to sue everyone so they can get their cut? Right? So look for all the big deals. Am I going to make sure nothing gets built in the state again? Because every time there's a contract, there's going to be a lawyer saying, I want my cut. I'm going to sue the government, get my 1%. Right? Am I doing that now? I mean, if I'm some lawyer who's in trouble, that's going to be my job. I just sue the state. I'll win one of these, and I'll put $400,000 in my pocket.
Right. Welcome to Illinois politics, where our property tax system actually works that way. So there is some incentive for that. The problem is that you're tying up a bunch of time. In other words, they have to.
Yes.
They actually have to win at the bid objection. So, and there's some pretty strict guidelines that.
So, are we going to have to change state law in every state to make the TIB work?
If you're talking about government contracts,
yes.
And it depends on if it's touched by federal funds. You may have to have a federal law too.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, sorry.
Jerome, we could be in trouble here, brother. We could be in trouble.
Sorry.
If I gotta do both state and federal lawsuits.
You wouldn't have to. The bid award wouldn't be. That would be handled by the agency that's administering the contract. So, in other words, if it's the state of New York, then you go before a state of New York judge.
Yeah, but the funds for this thing are going to be okayed by some federal bureaucrat or some federal liaison, right?
Well, they've already been
okayed by that.
Yes.
But for X, once it's not X, those funds no longer approved, are they? Now we got to get a reapproval on it now, and maybe even rewrite the grant, don't we?
If it goes lower, then you don't have to get reauthorization for that.
Lower you don't. Okay.
You don't. Higher you do. But in order to pay this 1% fee, if it's touched by federal funds, you probably can't pay that 1% from the federal funds. So you're gonna
got it.
It would be at the state level. And then there
So that
may
means
be
either
a
you only
federal
get
provision
1%.
that says that you can't do that even with state money.
Yeah, so you either would have to only get 1% of state funds, or the state would have to also pay more because would have to cut from the federal funds.
Yeah. Yeah, it's ugly. If I didn't work in federal budgeting for 3 years, I wouldn't know this rule. But yeah.
No. That's why we have an expert crew together. Yes, that's why we have a crew. That's why we have people here who do this. Yes, absolutely.
For the amount of 1%, will we really incur that issue?
Yes,
what if we call him a consultant?
Yeah, yeah. You're touching taxpayer money. So yes, all of it is subject to all sorts of rules and provisions.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Well, okay, right. It wouldn't. Oh, would it apply when the funding comes from, say, naming rights, specifically in that scenario?
Naming rights, as far as I know, would not be applicable because when they set this all up back in the 30s, they didn't think naming rights was important. They didn't think that was property.
I think that the way this could work, if I get this right, Jerome, if you could find a total alternative source of funding, it would work.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? You just couldn't adjust the funding. In other words, if you could say, I don't want any of those government funds, here is some other way of funding it, then no laws would apply in that regard because you're not using taxpayer dollars. The issue is, where would you get the 1%? Would the 1% have to be part of the money you raised? Or would the 1% come from some fund that the city or municipality or state would have? Then you could do it, right?
To me, yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So if the bridge costs $10,000, I can get $10,000 for you. Okay, great. 1% yours. But who gives you the $100? Are you raising 10,000 and $100, and $100 goes in your pocket, 10,000 goes to the bridge, or does the city have to pay you $100?
Yeah, so I envision yeah.
Go ahead.
But I envision the city would pay you $100 because that's a steal of a deal.
I agree. The city should pay you $100.
But I understand
but that means it has to have you would have to create, I guess you could use the thing you talked about for us. You'd have to create a TIB fund, right? You have to create a TIB fund that would sit there and be prepared to pay the 1%.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So maybe that's the policy.
Could that in any way be similar to the surcharge we were talking about earlier? No.
Yes, exactly. Yes. We use the surcharge that we're already taking, right? So it's no extra tax. It's already being taken. But then that money would be, remember our rule, no new taxes, no matter what, right? No matter what, no new taxes. So it's the same tax we're already using, but then that tax would go to the TIB fund, that would be available to pay out the 1%, which would be a steal. Because you're right. If they're not spending the money on the thing, that's just extra money now in the till for the municipality or the city or the state. And in theory, if you keep track of that, should we make part of the rule, there has to be some form of refund. For example, 1% gets paid from the TIB, right, whatever it is, to that person who does it, plus whatever amount of money is saved, 50% goes into a fund to go back to the municipality or the city or in a refund every year, like the check the Alaskans give, right? The Alaskans get that.
Yeah.
But the problem though becomes, okay, hold on. Here's a question, Russ. Let's say we do this, right? We find a way. Again, this bridge costs $800 million, and we have allocated $100 million from the federal government, $700 million from the state.
Okay.
Right? So we have that money allocated. Here comes Jerome. I got you $800 million. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
That money now, does it sit there, or does that money have to go towards the bridge when the bridge is not being built with that money? Does the municipality still keep the cash, or do they have to give it back because the bridge is being funded by something else? Do you happen to know how that works?
So the
From
way
the
that
federal government, right? The state already keeps the money, I know, but
Yeah.
the federal government, does the federal money go back now?
the federal money gets reported back to Treasury.
Yeah, that's the problem.
So it's 2 bridges that we build.
It is. And there's money that, and I think a number of politicians bring up from time to time that our government budgets so much money that there's money that's actually returned back to the Treasury every October because the agencies couldn't fund everything. So
yeah, so that would mean that the only problem we'd have in that one then is you would only give back half of the money that you still had, right? Because some of it wouldn't. So in this case, the federal funds of $100 go back, the $700 million would stay. Half of that will be allocated back to Treasury of the state level, and the other half would go into a fund that will go back in the taxpayer rebate at the end of the year.
Mhm.
Jerome, you okay with that plan?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the TIB works if you can find an alternative way of funding the thing, period. Can you fund the thing in another way? You can. You found it. Awesome, right? Boom. Once that happens, all monies that don't have to return to the Treasury, 1% of the TIB fund goes to the individual who came up with the idea. And whatever funds don't go back to the Treasury, half of that goes into a state or municipality, whatever, whoever's building the thing, fund to pay back to its citizens in a tax rebate. Eric, you're not saying anything.
I'm pondering.
Okay.
I'm looking.
Matt, where are you on this?
I'm still trying to figure it out, wrap my head around it, I guess. But yeah, I think we're.
I
think we're
lived
the
in
right
Colorado, so it's a little bit like Tabor, which is their taxpayer rebate amendment.
I mean, it gives incentives for people to get taxpayer rebates and the whole deal, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, they get money back every year.
Well, also, I mean, to Eric's point, if I'm some rich guy in the city and I want to make people happy, I buy the bridge, I get the naming rights, and people get a tax rebate. It's because of me, because I'm the rich guy. It's not a bad deal. If I want to, I can put my name on a hospital or something, or I can put my name on a bridge. I mean, whatever. I'm a rich guy, tons of money, do stuff. I guess, right?
Yeah.
That's how the robber barons did it, right?
There we go. We're bringing back
Or
robber barons,
Zuckerberg.
Eric. You're batting 1,000 here.
That's right. 1920. It's coming back.
That's it. Bring it back. There we go.
Yes. And remind me again why it wouldn't work for partial. Let's say out of that 800 million, you could only knock off 200 million from the private sector. That wouldn't be
because you would have to rebid the entire project. That's why you'd have to rebid the entire project.
Well, can't you just make a donation? And then
Oh, okay. So you're not saying I changed the way to do it. You're saying I simply find another way of funding it other than taxation.
Right. So changing the way you do it is a way of alternative funding, or you can just come up with the cash one way or another. Straight cash.
I think that could work, couldn't it? Because if you just came up with the cash, the 1% wouldn't even come from the TIB fund. It would just come from the money that you saved. You came with cash. You're giving cash. 1% that goes in your pocket.
So, Jerome, let me ask this. So let's say the bridge, government's going to try and build the bridge for 1.2 billion. You say that you can do it for 800 million.
No. That's not what he's saying.
No.
In this specific case, he's saying, I can find you $400 million of money that is not taxpayer money. That's, in this case, what he's saying. He's not saying it's a different way of doing it. He's saying, I can find another way of funding it to where I can get you $400 million of non-taxpayer money. That's what he's saying.
Okay.
And I'm saying if you could do that, I don't know how, that'd be amazing. That yes, the 1% would come off of that. So instead of giving the state 400 million, you would give the state whatever 300 and whatever that is million, 3.6 million, whatever it is, 360 million, whatever. You'd give the state 360 million. You'd keep the 1% or 300 and whatever the money amount is, 396 million. You would give the state 396 million. You would keep 4 million in your pocket, right? You give the rest to the state, and then of the 396 million the state was going to pay, half of that would go back to Treasury, and then half of that would go into the fund to give people a tax rebate at the end of the year.
Right.
Does that make sense for us?
Yeah, I'm not.
So Jerome knows a Russian oligarch who wants his boat back. He's just like, I got to get rid of 400 million. And Jerome's like, I got an idea.
Yeah,
I got an idea for you, man. Vlad, I can get a bridge with your name on it. How about that? I got a bridge for you.
And your boat's in New York, and while they're building this bridge, out your boat goes. Everyone's happy.
Everybody's happy. There we go. I love it.
I think that would actually work. I know
because the bridge is still being built.
Yeah,
the money is still going out. Right, it's still coming out. You're not rebidding.
Yeah,
right, and you're not changing what's being done. You're just finding another way of funding this thing.
Right.
Gonna be a lot of very happy Chinese named bridges. That's what I'm saying. Every bridge we have is gonna have a Chinese name on it.
Yeah,
Russian name on it.
I don't see a way that there would be an objection to it from a legal standpoint. Other than, now there's some ethics stuff, like the government ethics watchdogs would hate it. But you're basically as a contractor, there's no difference between this and selling at a loss. Basically saying, I'm going to bid it at 1.2 billion, but I'm going to take a $400 million loss on it too. And there's contractors that do that too and forgive government debt on projects. So I don't see why not.
Jerome, you good with this?
Private source for the funds.
Yeah.
All right.
That's good.
All right. We did a lot. We moved forward on 2 and we wrapped up the TIB. We didn't do any environmental stuff that was cool from the explosion stuff, but it's fine. We were behind.
We'll ponder that.
Yeah, we'll work on that next time. Guys, if you're still watching, if you haven't fallen asleep, then do me a favor, click the like button. Because if you actually watch this for 2 hours, you like this or you're insane. So please click the like button. One of the two. Click the like button. This is a policy meeting live. I'm happy. A policy meeting because I spelled it wrong. But anyway, do it anyway. Go ahead, do that. If you watch this on Twitter, retweet it. Why not? Bore someone else. Please do it. It does make sense. People like it. It's totally fine. I do appreciate you guys doing this. And of course, if you want to, you can always support my sponsors, theadvocates.org. If they didn't watch, they fell asleep. But that's okay. You don't have to. Watch theadvocates.org. Take one of their, you can check. They have tons of policy issues, right? Take one of their surveys. Make it all happy. It is all good. Everybody, I want to say thank you so much for tonight. For all of you who watched, first time we did a live policy meeting. I hope it was interesting for you. I will see you all